This is TLV1.
The Tel Aviv Review with Gilad Halpern.
Hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review, a program dedicated to the word, to the thought and to debate, brought to you by the Van Leer Jerusalem Institute, which promotes humanistic, democratic and liberal values in the social discourse in Israel. I'm your host Gilad Halpern, and every week I'll be engaging in close encounters of the intellectual kind with writers and scholars, or simply people of ideas of all types and vocations who have done something to make our lives a tad more interesting. My guest today is a sociologist and professor of contemporary Jewish studies at Brandeis University, and most importantly, Mr. Birthright, or Professor Birthright rather, a world-renowned authority on the program that has brought hundreds of thousands of young diaspora Jews on an all-expenses-paid trips to Israel, and in many ways, more than most have predicted, reformulated the relationship between Israel and the Jewish diaspora. Professor Leonard Saxe, hello, and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review.
Hello, I'm pleased to be here.
So one thing that you can safely say about Birthright is that it's been a phenomenal success, more so than many of its most fervent supporters had believed. Now, you've been following the program from its very early stages, practically from its inception almost 2 decades ago. So please tell us, what were the goals that its founders set in the beginning, and how did they evolve over the years?
Well, the goal was initially very simple: to promote the Jewish identity of people who were thought to be lost or on their way out of a connection with their Jewish identities, to counter assimilation. But a second goal, and very important, was Ahavat Israel, love of Israel, and then thirdly, a sense of Klal Yisrael, a sense that we are all together in this.
Which is essentially the goals of every Jewish cultural program, isn't it?
Essentially. I think what was different about Birthright, or Taglit as it is called here, is that it was trying to affect a group of people who were thought not to be connectable. These were the people, children of intermarriage, people who had not gotten Jewish education. They were also college students, and some people thought it was too late to have a program for them.
Mm-hmm. And still, some people, namely Yossi Beilin, a former minister, pushed it forward. Tell us a bit about the teething problems in the beginning, and how difficult was it really to surmount all the criticism that was leveled against it?
Well, Yossi Beilin's original idea back in 1992-93 was for slightly younger people, 17-year-olds, and he was going to have a jamboree, bring all young Jews of around that age to Israel to be together. He also wanted to reformulate, restructure the relationship of diaspora Jewry in Israel, do away with the Sachnut, the Jewish agency, and replace it with an agency that would form ties between the diaspora and Israel, and not on the basis of Israel being the poor cousin of the diaspora, but being a place where you could learn, a place that had lots of resources. As it changed, and as several philanthropists, Charles Bronfman, Michael Steinhardt, later in the 90s, developed the program, the idea was to bring college students and to make it a free trip, and to do it for 10 days.
Mm-hmm. And one of the criticism, as you said, was that college students are too old to reconnect with or to reinvent themselves as engaged Jews. And the other was that a 10-day trip is really not enough, and it just offers a glimpse, and then at the end of the day, it may be counterproductive. Why did these predictions not materialize?
Well, I think, and I'm a psychologist by training, and psychology may have done a job on how we think about human development, thinking that everything is set in early childhood and by age 13. And in fact, human development occurs throughout the lifespan. I think particularly for this generation of millennials, they grew up with their parents not being as directive, not giving them rules, exposing them to lots of ideas, lots of cultural and spiritual traditions. And college has become much, much more important for them. The second thing about 10 days is we think in linear terms. Children think, and some educators think, that learning and being educated is about drops of knowledge being somehow inserted into the cortex. And in fact, how we develop our intellectual, our even social abilities is more about specific experiences, liminal experiences, things that happen to you. It's one professor at college often who changes your life, one set of ideas, one book, and that's why the 10 days is important.
And in Taglit's case, so you're saying that it's more of a social experience than a learning experience that made it so powerful?
It's both, and I think that's the secret. It is about demonstrating to people what it means to be Jewish. I like to think about, or I talk sometimes about, Judaism as a contact sport. It is a set of ideas, but most importantly, it's about relationships. It's about what we do. It's about what we do with other people. And many young Jews, whether they've had Jewish education or not, in the diaspora, in some cases here in Israel, haven't had that experience.
Mm-hmm. One of your key findings, and I think it's by far one of the most interesting aspects of Taglit, is that it actually fostered engagement among diaspora Jews, but, making them better Jews, as it were, more committed Jews to their Judaism at home, not necessarily Israel. In many ways, Israel here is perhaps a stepping stone or a vessel or something that, is just instrumental at the end of the day.
Well, actually, the strongest effects of Birthright are on the attachment to Israel that the participants feel. And as they get involved in Judaism as a religion, as a religious tradition, the effects are a little bit more muted. And this generation is not engaging in Judaism in the way that previous generations did. Just being a member of a synagogue is not the mark for them. They want to do Jewish, they want to do Jewish things at home and so on. But actually their connection to Israel and their feeling of a tie, a bond, is the strongest and most lasting impact of the program.
Mm-hmm. But how did it translate into something that is not necessarily related to Israel?
Well, they go together. So they get interested in Jewish books. Some of them go and learn Hebrew. They take courses. And perhaps most important, at least to some people, they want to marry other Jews because they see themselves as a part of the Jewish people, sharing a destiny, and they want to share that with their own children, in their own family. And
what about, going back to the question about Israel's role in here, do you think that a similar effect might have been if they, were all Jews going to other places of Jewish importance, I don't know, Eastern Europe or Andalusia or, what have you, rediscovering an aspect of Jewish history? Would it have been as formative as Birthright?
Well, let me start with a more radical suggestion. I call it the Cancun hypothesis. I like scuba diving. If you took a group of Jews to Cancun, and we don't think so. We haven't done the experiment, although I'd be glad to try it out. Now, the other possibility of bringing them to a historical Jewish site, the problem is that most places that they go in Eastern Europe, Poland and Lithuania, wherever, the sites are historical. There's not much left of the vibrancy of Jewish life. So coming here from the moment they arrive at Ben Gurion, from the moment they get on Kvish Chad and see signs in Hebrew, they are immersed in a culture, and that's really important.
And the fact that Tel Aviv is a cool Mediterranean city, of course, helps a lot.
Right. Well, it's actually hot, but it is a cool city, yes.
Yes, absolutely. Did you ever try and compare it to similar trips? Well, not similar, but parallel trips that high school students in Israel take to Poland, to the sites of the Holocaust. It also has this formative element to it. and many problems as well.
Yeah, the problem of directly comparing is that Israeli high school students are not directly comparable to college students. And even when we compare American or diasporans who go to Poland on a similar march, like on the March of the Living, they're a different group. They tend to be the most engaged. They come from families that are already engaged in Jewish life. So it's very hard to see the unique effects of the experience.
Mm-hmm. And tell us also about how really it transformed the understanding of unaffiliated Jews, those who, as you said, are children of intermarriage, people who didn't really have a strong element of Jewish identity at home. Do they also affect their surrounding? For example, kids that went on Birthright go back home and enthrall their parents and siblings, for example?
Absolutely. In fact, one of my students, Janet Aronson, did her dissertation on, she called it the ripple effect of Birthright and how it affected parents and brought them closer to Israel, made them more likely to visit or to want to visit Israel. So it has very broad effects. The other thing that's stunning to me is that at the core of how Birthright operates today is the mifgash, the engagement of Yisraelim. Most of them are chayalim. They're doing their service, and they join trips for 5 to 10 days. And one of the things we've learned is that the impact on them is nearly as profound as the impact on the diasporans, because the Israelis see themselves as Israelis going into the program. They come out of the program seeing themselves as Yehudim, as seeing themselves connected not just to fellow Jews in Israel, but to Jews around the world.
Wow, that's really, really interesting. And also, I mean, you cannot take out politics or the conflict with a big C out of the experience. And of course, this is an issue that increasingly polarizes both Israelis but also American Jews. How does it play out in the program itself?
Well, the program teaches about the conflict and their specific sessions. They also, more importantly, have an opportunity to talk with the Israelis, both the Madrachim, Mari Derech, as well as their peers. The program isn't intended to be a crash course in the geopolitical context.
But it's an elephant in the room, nonetheless.
I don't know if it's an elephant in the room. What it does is it gives the diasporans, and I can speak specifically about those Maratzot Abrit from America, they often come with not just a poor understanding, but a bad understanding of the conflict. We tested people before they came once about the map of Israel, and many of them thought that Tel Aviv was on the West Bank. Mm. And if you it's not an unreasonable assumption.
It's
if
not
you
that far.
It's not that far, but it is on the coast, and it's on the western coast. And if you don't appreciate that, then you don't appreciate much of the dialogue, discussion, conflict about the conflict. So they get, I call it, in psychological terms, schemata. They get a frame to be able to interpret the news, the developments, political developments, etc.
And what about people who are verging perhaps on the more radical side, who knew nothing about Israel, came here and suddenly discovered that there's the occupation, that Israel is, for them, they discover that it's the oppressor and they don't want anything to do with Israel and, I don't know, turn into BDS activists on their campuses, etc. Does that even happen?
I'm sure it happens with 500,000 people. Almost anything is likely to happen, or there are some cases. But actually, young American Jews are very, very positive about Israel. Americans in general are very positive about Israel. And those who are on the extreme and support BDS are a very tiny group. Doesn't mean that they're not consequential, but they're a very, very tiny group. And in fact, what Birthright does is increases the level of attachment, even amongst those who become critical. It increases the level of attachment of everybody, in particular those who start off, if I can characterize them as being on the left.
Mm-hmm. One last question before we wrap up. If you could identify one thing that Birthright did well that led to its success where so many other programs failed.
Well, it treats people as adults, and it treats people where they are, and tries to teach not by being didactic. I call Birthright chinuch. It's education at its best. It's not hasbara. It allows the narratives to emerge from discussion, from processing, from being people able to touch, feel, see both the people and the land. Okay.
Professor Leonard Saxe, a sociologist and professor of contemporary Jewish studies at Brandeis University and a world-renowned authority on Taglit Birthright. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Toda rabah.
That brings us to the end of our show today. Thank you very much for listening. Also, big thanks to Alex Benish, the technical producer of this show. I'm Gilad Halpern, signing off here in Tel Aviv. Do join us again next week for another edition of the Tel Aviv Review. And until then, goodbye.
בוקר טוב אמיר, אז בוא נשיר ביחד שיר, נשיר באהבה.